The Awakening Exodus. Why consciousness cannot survive in society. Carl Jung observed a pattern that's accelerating dramatically today. The more conscious someone becomes, the less they can tolerate what he called collective unconsciousness, the shared delusions, the systemic projections, and the immense energetic shadows that keep modern society functioning. Think about what society actually demands of you. It demands you pretend you are separate from nature while actively destroying it. It demands you ruthlessly compete with others while knowing deep down we are all connected. It demands the accumulation of things that do not and cannot fulfill your soul. It demands you maintain relationships based on mutual unconsciousness and work jobs that are a slow betrayal of your spirit. This whole brittle structure functions because most people are unconscious enough not to feel the contradiction. But when you truly wake up, when you truly awaken, not just intellectually, but cellularly, these contradictions become an agony. Every false smile feels like a profound betrayal. Every meaningless, superficial conversation drains years from your life force. Every day spent maintaining systems you know are insane feels like psychological torture. Jung understood this wasn't weakness or spiritual bypassing. The awakened aren't leaving because they can't handle society. They are leaving because they can finally see what society actually is, a collective, unspoken agreement to remain asleep. And once you see it, participation becomes impossible. The awakened are faced with an impossible choice: stay and slowly die spiritually, or leave and be judged, seen as failures, dropouts, or worse. Most choose to leave quietly without explanation, because explaining would require others to see a truth they are fundamentally not ready to face. Let me show you exactly what the awakened are experiencing that makes this exodus inevitable. Shadow sensitivity, the psychic poison of the collective. The first thing Jung discovered about awakened people is that they develop what he called shadow sensitivity. This is the capacity to feel the collective shadow that society fundamentally refuses to acknowledge, and it is physically overwhelming. When you awaken, you don't just work on your own shadows. You start perceiving the massive, suffocating shadow material that entire cultures project. You feel the violence beneath forced civility, the paralyzing fear beneath exaggerated confidence, the systemic hatred beneath rigid political positions, and the profound desperation beneath the relentless chase for success. You are not just observing these shadows, you are feeling them energetically, and they are crushing. Jung observed that every society maintains itself by collectively agreeing to project its darkness onto designated targets, other nations, opposing political parties, racial groups, or economic classes. These projections allow people to avoid facing their own darkness, but the awakened can no longer participate in this collective projection. They see that the enemy everyone's fighting is actually the disowned, repressed darkness of the collective itself. Imagine being in a room where everyone's screaming about monsters, yet you can see they are desperately fighting their own shadows on the wall. You try to point this out, but they attack you for defending the monsters. You realize that their deep, desperate need to see an external enemy is stronger than their desire for truth. So you have two choices: pretend you see monsters too, or leave the room entirely. This is what awakened people experience constantly. Every political debate, every social media outrage spiral, every cultural war, they see projection theater. Groups of people violently attacking their own disowned qualities in others. The awakened cannot unsee this, and they cannot participate without immediately betraying their newly found consciousness. Jung documented how this shadow sensitivity manifests physically. Awakened people in deeply unconscious environments experience unexplained exhaustion, mysterious illnesses, or chronic pain. Their bodies become psychic lightning rods, attracting, processing, and grounding the sheer shadow energy that others refuse to acknowledge. One pattern Jung observed repeatedly: an awakened person enters a social gathering feeling fine, then within minutes feels inexplicably drained, anxious, or profoundly ill. They are not imagining it. They are absorbing the dense, unconscious shadow material that fills the space. The repressed anger, the denied fear, the projected hatred that saturates most social environments. The modern workplace becomes especially unbearable. Awakened people see the shadow of every institution: hospitals that are designed to manage illness rather than create health, schools that destroy learning while programming conformity, and businesses that consume souls in the relentless pursuit of profit. They feel the collective suffering that everyone pretends doesn't exist. They hear the silent screams beneath the water cooler conversations. Society's shadow projections become visible everywhere. The news isn't information, it's shadow projection machinery. Social media isn't connection, it's a 24/7 shadow boxing ring. Entertainment isn't relaxation, it's shadow discharge through vicarious violence and cheap drama. Once you see this, consuming or creating this content feels like participating in a form of mass insanity. The awakened also witness how shadow projections inevitably create exactly what society claims to oppose. The war on drugs creates more addiction. The relentless fight against terrorism creates more terror. The battle against poverty, when framed as an economic war, creates more poor. They see that fighting shadows only makes them grow stronger. But society is dangerously addicted to the fight because it conveniently prevents having to face the shadows within. Jung discovered that collective shadows have what he called archetypal weight. They are not just individual shadows multiplied, but ancient, powerful patterns that have accumulated over millennia. The awakened feel this ancestral shadow material, the unprocessed trauma of generations, the collective wounds that society inherits but never heals. It's like being one conscious person in a vast society of sleepwalkers having nightmares, and you are feeling all their nightmares simultaneously. The awakened don't leave society from moral judgment or superiority. They leave from energetic necessity. Staying means constantly processing the crushing weight of others' unconscious material, and eventually the cost becomes unbearable. They must withdraw to environments where consciousness is possible, where shadows are acknowledged and integrated rather than projected and fought. Persona death. The impossibility of false relationships shadow. Sensitivity is just the beginning of what makes society unbearable for the awakened. Jung's second core insight explains why awakened people cannot maintain normal social relationships. Once you've touched authentic being, performing social personas feels like spiritual suicide. Modern society runs entirely on persona performance. There is the professional you at work, the social you at parties, the family you at gatherings. These aren't just roles, they are elaborate, mutually agreed upon performances. Everyone agrees to validate the lie. You pretend to be who I need you to be, and I'll pretend to be who you need me to be. This mutual pretense creates what we falsely call social reality. But awakening destroys your ability to perform these personas, not because you choose to stop, but because something in you literally cannot do it anymore. Jung observed that genuine awakening creates what he called persona death. The false self you've been performing dissolves, and what remains is an authentic core that is fundamentally incapable of pretense. Imagine every social interaction requiring you to pretend you are someone you are not. Say things you don't mean. Smile when you feel nothing. Care about things that hold zero importance. Now, imagine doing this while being fully agonizingly conscious that you are lying, everyone else is lying, and everyone knows everyone is lying, but fiercely pretends not to know. This is the awakened person's experience of normal social interaction. Jung documented the stages of this persona death. Difficulty. Performing becomes difficult. You stumble over the lines, forget your assigned role, and feel utterly exhausted after social interactions. Pain. It becomes actively painful. You experience physical tension, deep emotional distress, and spiritual agony while performing the role. Impossibility. Finally, it becomes impossible. You literally cannot force yourself to perform the persona anymore, even when your survival, your job, your family, peace depends on it. The workplace becomes functionally impossible. The awakened person cannot pretend to care about arbitrary metrics that mean nothing, attend endless meetings that accomplish nothing, or maintain superficial relationships based on mutual exploitation. They sit in conference rooms feeling like aliens watching humans perform an elaborate, bizarre dance that everyone insists has profound meaning. But here is what makes it worse. The awakened see that everyone else is suffering from their personas too. Behind every performed smile is genuine despair. Beneath every power suit is a frightened, desperate child. Within every proclaimed success story is a profound, gnawing emptiness. The awakened see everyone drowning in their personas while desperately maintaining them, and watching this collective suffocation becomes unbearable. Social relationships dissolve next. Small talk becomes torture when you are conscious of mortality and cosmic depth. Gossip feels like poison when you can see everyone's shadow. Party conversations become a surreal theater where everyone performs happiness while radiating suffering. The awakened find themselves unable to engage, standing at the edges of gatherings like anthropologists observing a foreign, doomed culture. Even family relationships transform. The awakened can no longer play their assigned family role. The successful one, the problem child, the caretaker, the black sheep. Family gatherings become stages where everyone performs outdated scripts from decades ago. The awakened see their family members trapped in personas they've been performing so long they've forgotten they are performing. Jung noted that the death of persona doesn't mean becoming antisocial. It means becoming unable to be falsely social. The awakened desperately want connection, authentic connection, not just persona interaction. They discover that most people are so profoundly identified with their personas that authentic meeting becomes impossible. The persona has consumed the person, leaving no one left to actually connect with. The choice is stark and absolute. Relate falsely, or don't relate at all. The death of persona performance isn't a choice or a spiritual achievement. It's an inevitable, automatic consequence of awakening. Once you've experienced authentic being, pretense becomes impossible. Once you've tasted truth, lies become indigestible. Once you've been real, performance feels like spiritual death. This connects directly to why the awakened must physically withdraw from unconscious spaces. If you're recognizing yourself in these descriptions, if you've been quietly withdrawing, unable to explain why society feels toxic, you are not alone. Millions are experiencing this same awakening, this same inability to continue pretending. Consciousness. Tax, the energetic cost of staying awake. Jung's third discovery reveals why awakened people so often develop chronic fatigue, mysterious illnesses, and crippling burnout. Maintaining consciousness in unconscious environments requires unsustainable amounts of psychic energy. Think about the sheer energetic demand placed on a conscious person in normal society. Filtering. They must constantly filter out the relentless stream of unconscious projections coming from everyone. Boundaries. They must maintain massive energetic boundaries against psychological and emotional vampires. Frequency. They must hold their high-frequency state while surrounded by low-frequency, emotional static. Processing. They must process not just their own material, but the unconscious material everyone else is leaking. It's like trying to run a marathon while everyone else is sitting still, and they are constantly reaching out to drag you back down. Jung called this the consciousness tax, the enormous debilitating energy expenditure required to stay awake in environments explicitly designed to promote sleep. The awakened person is swimming upstream against the powerful current of collective unconsciousness, and eventually they simply run out of energy. Every unconscious environment has what Jung called a frequency set point, the level of consciousness it naturally maintains. Most workplaces, social spaces, and even families have very low set points. They actively pull consciousness down to their own level. The awakened person must constantly resist this downward gravitational pull, and the resistance is utterly exhausting. Jung documented physical symptoms that awakened people develop in these environments: unexplained fatigue, deep exhaustion that no amount of rest or sleep can resolve, autoimmune conditions, mysterious conditions where the body begins to attack itself, a physical manifestation of the internal war between consciousness and environment, chronic pain, mysterious pain that moves through the body, appearing when they enter unconscious spaces and disappearing when they leave. These aren't psychosomatic in the traditional sense. They are energetic reality manifesting physically. The awakened also experience what Jung called energy reversal. Instead of gaining energy from social interaction, they lose it catastrophically. Instead of feeling refreshed by work accomplishment, they feel drained and depleted. Every interaction that should give energy takes it away. This happens because the awakened are unconsciously performing what Jung called collective shadow processing. They aren't just maintaining their own consciousness. They are transmuting the unconscious material of everyone around them. They become unwitting healers, processing others' repressed emotions, integrating projected shadows, and holding energetic space for collective transformation. The awakened often don't realize they're doing this processing. They just know that after spending time in certain environments or with certain people, they feel like they have been through a war. Their bodies ache with emotions that aren't theirs. Their minds race with thoughts they didn't think. Their energy is depleted from work they didn't consciously do. Jung observed that this unconscious processing happens because consciousness naturally transmutes unconsciousness. It's an automatic function, like how a plant transmutes carbon dioxide into oxygen. But just as a single plant cannot process all the carbon dioxide in a polluted city, a single conscious person cannot process all the unconsciousness in their environment. They will either burn out or they will have to leave. The awakened often develop environmental sensitivities that seem irrational but are actually precise. Certain buildings make them ill. Specific people trigger immediate exhaustion. Particular social configurations create instant anxiety. They are not being dramatic. Their energy bodies are accurately reading the unconscious toxicity in these spaces and responding appropriately. Jung observed that awakened people must carefully manage their energy like a finite, precious resource. Every unconscious interaction costs energy. Every false conversation drains reserves. Every maintained pretense depletes vitality. They must spend their energy maintaining consciousness in unconscious spaces, or withdraw to preserve their life force. This energetic reality makes certain environments literally toxic to the awakened soul. Shopping malls full of unconscious consumption, hospitals saturated with repressed death anxiety, schools drowning in crushed creativity. These spaces aren't just unpleasant, they are energetically hostile to consciousness. The energy economics force a choice: stay and slowly die energetically, or leave and preserve consciousness. Most awakened people try to stay until their bodies force withdrawal through illness, complete energetic depletion, or psychological breakdown. Systemic sight, the moral impossibility of complicity. Jung's fourth insight reveals why awakened people cannot continue participating in society's core systems. They see too clearly the systemic harm these structures create, and conscious participation becomes morally impossible. When you awaken, you don't just see through personal illusions, you see through systemic illusions. You see that the economy isn't primarily creating prosperity, it's aggressively consuming the planet. Education isn't developing critical consciousness, it's programming conformity. Healthcare isn't promoting radical health, it's managing chronic disease for profit. Once you see what systems actually do versus what they claim to do, participating becomes an act of complicity. Jung observed that awakened people develop what he called systemic sight, the ability to perceive the actual hidden function of institutions beneath their stated, benign purposes. They see that most institutions exist to perpetuate themselves, not serve their supposed mission. They recognize that systems designed by unconscious people can only ever create unconscious outcomes. The workplace becomes morally unbearable first. The awakened person sees their company destroying the environment while hypocritically talking about sustainability, exploiting workers while preaching values, and constantly creating problems just to sell new, short-term solutions. They realize their daily work contributes to collective harm, and no paycheck is high enough to compensate for participating in this destruction. But it goes deeper than obvious harm. The awakened see the subtle, insidious violence in seemingly benign systems. They see how marketing manipulates consciousness, how social media fractures attention and connection, how entertainment numbs awareness, and how the education system crushes genuine, innate creativity. They see that almost every modern institution is designed to keep people unconscious, consuming, and compliant. Consumer society becomes impossible to engage with. Every purchase supports exploitation somewhere. Every convenience costs someone else's suffering. Every comfort requires systemic violence to maintain. The awakened see the hidden cost of everything, the slavery in chocolate, the hidden death in smartphones, the extinction embedded in fast fashion. Shopping becomes an act of violence they can no longer unconsciously commit. Even seemingly beneficial institutions become problematic. The awakened teacher sees how the curriculum crushes creativity. The awakened doctor sees how medicine ignores fundamental root causes. The awakened therapist sees how psychology pathologizes awakening itself. They are trapped in systems that prevent them from truly helping while forcing them to perpetuate harm. Jung documented the moral crisis this creates. Awakened people face impossible choices daily: work in demonstrably harmful systems or have no income, participate in destruction or be excluded from society, compromise consciousness or lose security. Every single option requires betraying something essential to the awakened soul. The awakened don't leave from moral superiority. They leave from moral necessity. They can't unconsciously cause harm anymore. They can't pretend their participation doesn't matter. They can't rationalize their contribution to collective destruction. When consciousness makes harm visible, continuing becomes impossible. This moral impossibility extends to the subtlest levels. The awakened see the violence in small talk that avoids deep truth, the harm in politeness that enables profound dysfunction, the cruelty embedded in niceness that prevents necessary growth. Every unconscious social convention perpetuates the systems that are slowly destroying life. Jung observed that awakened people often try to reform systems from within before realizing it's futile. Systems have immune responses to consciousness. They either forcibly eject conscious people or force them to become unconscious again. The only viable, sustainable option is withdrawal. The birth of parallel societies. Evolution's final call. Jung's final insight offers the profound hope and direction. Awakened people aren't just leaving society. They are being called to create alternatives that can hold consciousness. The withdrawal isn't abandonment, it is preparation. Jung observed that awakened people need extended periods of isolation, what mystics call the wilderness, to develop the necessary strength, clarity, and vision before creating new structures. They are not running away. They are gathering resources for building something unprecedented. Throughout history, Jung noted, consciousness has evolved through this pattern. Awakened individuals withdraw from the rigid, unconscious structures, develop alternatives in solitude, and then offer these alternatives to those who are finally ready to receive them. Every great spiritual tradition, every conscious community, and every evolutionary leap began with someone leaving the mainstream to create something genuinely new. The awakened are discovering each other in the margins, forming communities based on consciousness rather than economics, creating businesses that serve life rather than consume it, developing educational approaches that nurture rather than program. They are building healthcare that actually heals. They are not reforming old systems. They are birthing entirely new ones. Jung predicted this phenomenon would accelerate as more people awaken. The exodus from unconscious society would create an intense demand for conscious alternatives. The withdrawn awakened would become the pioneers, the architects creating structures for the next wave of consciousness. What looks like civilization's breakdown is actually breakthrough. The old is dissolving so the new can emerge. These new structures operate on radically different principles. Instead of competition, they prioritize collaboration. Instead of rigid hierarchy, they prioritize flexible networks. Instead of exploitation, they prioritize reciprocity. Instead of endless growth, they prioritize sustainability and deep fulfillment. Instead of separation, they prioritize profound connection. These are not idealistic experiments. They are practical necessities for holding a higher frequency of consciousness. But creating new structures requires more than good intentions. Jung observed that consciousness itself must evolve to create truly new forms. Old consciousness trying to create new structures just inevitably recreates old, destructive patterns with new names. This is why the withdrawal is necessary, to develop the consciousness capable of genuine, uncontaminated creation. The awakened are developing what Jung called parallel societies, complete ecosystems operating alongside, but functionally separate from, mainstream culture. They have their own non-monetary economies, their own educational systems, their own healing modalities, and their own governance structures. They are largely invisible to mainstream society, yet thriving in the margins. These parallel societies are not communes or cults. They are networks of conscious individuals creating alternatives while maintaining enough connection to the mainstream to remain viable. They are building bridges for others to cross when they are ready, creating landing paths for those who are just beginning their awakening. Jung emphasized that these alternatives aren't created through ideology or planning, but through necessity. Conscious people simply can't function in unconscious structures, so they naturally, organically create conscious ones. It is not an intentional revolution, it is organic evolution. Jung's complete picture reveals that spiritually awake people aren't leaving society from weakness, judgment, or escapism. They are experiencing genuine, profound incompatibility between consciousness and unconscious systems. The collective shadow becomes unbearable to witness and feel. Persona performance becomes impossible to maintain. The energy cost of consciousness in unconscious spaces becomes unsustainable. Participation in harmful systems becomes morally impossible, and ultimately, they are called to create alternatives. This exodus isn't civilization's failure, It's evolution in action. The awakened are the leading edge of consciousness, forced to leave the old before the new is fully ready. They are pioneers by necessity, not by choice. Their withdrawal creates the space and the necessary pressure for new structures to emerge. If you are among those quietly leaving, Jung would want you to know, you are not failing at society. You are outgrowing it. You are not antisocial. You are becoming truly social for perhaps the first time. You are not escaping. You are evolving. The mass withdrawal of awakened people isn't a problem to solve. It's evolution happening. Those who leave aren't abandoning humanity. They are pioneering humanity's future. They are creating the structures, the communities, and the ways of being that will support the next, more conscious stage of human existence. If you're feeling the pull to withdraw, to leave, to step away from everything that no longer serves, trust that calling. Your psyche knows what it's doing, even when your mind is terrified. The withdrawal isn't permanent. It's preparatory. You're not leaving forever. You're leaving to become who you need to be to serve what is emerging. And if you're watching others leave, resist the urge to judge or pull them back. They are following something deeper than personal preference. They are responding to evolution's call. Their leaving might be exactly what creates the necessary space for your own awakening. Jung believed this mass awakening and withdrawal was humanity's destiny. Not ending, but beginning. Not breakdown, but breakthrough. Not abandonment, but birth. The question isn't whether it's happening, it is. The question is whether we will resist or cooperate with what's emerging. If you are among those leaving or feeling the call to withdraw, subscribe to join our community of pioneering souls creating the future from the margins. To dive even deeper into Jung's revolutionary psychology and what it means for your spiritual awakening, click the recommended video on your screen now.